In today's session, we're going to talk about functions. We're going to look at different functions that we have used, how did we use them, as well as we're going to look at how to define our own functions. Okay, so the focus is more upon how to define our own functions. A program that is on the screen, and it starts with the keyword def. This def means define. When you use a define keyword, that means we are defining our own function. After the keyword def, we have a name, okay, and then we have parentheses, opening parentheses and closing parentheses, and then a colon. And then after that, in the following lines, there are a number of statements that are indented. So there is an indentation as compared to the body of the function. This keyword define says we are defining, keyword def says we are defining a function, and then the word that is written thing, this is a name of the function. It's our choice how we want to name it. Okay, and then we need to use opening and closing parentheses and then colon. So the syntax must have def and then a name of our choice, and then we must have parentheses and colon. After that, all the statements that we want to have in the function need to be indented, okay, as compared to the position of the keyword def. So there's the body or the head of the function, okay. Def is the head. As compared to that alignment, we need to indent all the statements that we want to keep inside the function. In this example, we see there are two print statements that are indented. So these two print statements make the body of the thing function. So that's the end of when the indentation is complete or unindented. So the next statement, whatever it is, it's again the same function name, but whatever it is that's unindented, that means this is not part of the function definition. So these are regular statements. Normally, when a program runs, it runs from top to bottom, right? One line by one line. Unless there is a loop back, there is a if condition, it will execute once from top to bottom. But when there is a function definition, such as this one that starts with def, those function statements are not executed at the beginning. Okay, so the program execution doesn't start at def. It will go after the function definition and start executing from after the definition of the function. Okay, so those lines will eventually be executed, but not at the beginning. So the first statement that will be executed is thing, thing. Now, this is, I call it as a statement, but it's actually a function. How do I know it's a function? It has a name and it has an opening and closing parenthesis. So when you have a name and a parenthesis, that means it's that function. Some functions are built-in functions and some functions are user-defined functions or programmer-defined functions. So when we write code, we can define our functions, and some functions are built-in function. For example, print function that we have this line, this is a built-in function. We did not define print function. There is no def and then print. Okay, that's not, print is not our defined function. We have used other functions that are built-in functions. For example, input. As you remember, by using input function, we can take user input. Whoever run the program can give input into the program. So we used input. The function name was input, and when we used input, there was parenthesis right after input. Okay, so that input was a function. Also, we have casting or type conversion. For example, int, and then there was bracket. So that converts from one data format to data type to another data type. Int converts to integer, float converts to decimal point or float number, str converts to string. Okay, so those are also functions, and each of these functions you will see there is a name, and right after that there is a parenthesis. Okay, print also has parenthesis. Some functions you will see different values inside parenthesis, and for some functions you will not see any value inside parenthesis. So program execution starts with thing function, and when we call a function versus when we define a function, when we use a function versus when you define a function, they are different. So when you see that the function that we have defined before with def keyword, so the function we defined is thing, and that thing also came later in the program in the execution sequence. So when you execute thing, we call that function or execute that function, or sometimes we say invoke that function. Okay, so this function call thing is a function call. It is a function. As you can see, it has a name and it has parentheses, so it is a function. However, it doesn't have a def before that function name. So this is not a function definition on this line. This is a function call. When you use the keyword def, then it is a function definition. But a function definition not only has its name and parentheses, but also has a colon after that. Okay, but when you call a function or use a function, you don't have a colon. You simply has the function name and parentheses. That's it. There is no colon. There is no def keyword. If you look at the last line, also this is a function call, thing, and then parentheses. So there is no def keyword. This is of course a function because it has a name and then parentheses. This is not a function definition because it didn't start with def, and on that line it didn't end with the colon. Okay, so this is a function call. So you can have a function definition or a function call or a function use. When it's a function call, that means I'm using that function. Now, we define our function, or there are some built-in functions that are already defined, and these functions help in organizing the code. Okay, and also it helps to understand the code, break down the problem into smaller problem, and then solve the smaller problem in different functions, and then we can use those functions. So the overall algorithm becomes much easier to solve in code. Also, a function code can be used repeatedly without writing that code repeatedly. So we can use that function, okay, repeatedly many times without writing that code many times. Here is an example. The thing function was called twice. On this line once, and then on the last line another time. So we used this thing function. When we use this thing function, the execution control goes in the function definition and execute the statements that are defined or used inside that function definition. So when you use this thing function, what happens? The program execution point goes to the thing function definition, execute all the statements, and after finishing that execution of all the statements in the function, it comes back to the function call place. So when we call this thing, it will go to thing function, execute this print statement hello, and then execute another printf statement fun, and then come back to thing function. If you have further expression in that same line, it will do that expression. For example, if you assign something, if you do other operation, that will do, and then it will go to next normal printf statement which prints zip, and then again we have a function call. When you have again the same function call, so the execution, program execution control goes into the function definition again and execute those two lines again, okay? And then when finished, it comes back from where it did go into the function definition. Now, if you look at the output, the first statement execute is calling this function, okay? The definition is not executed until it is called. So we call this function thing, so it starts executing, it goes, the control goes into the function, execute the print hello and execute the print fun. So you see the green lines, those are inside the function. As a result of function call, the hello is printed, fun was printed. And then it comes back, the function ends there, so it comes back from where it was called. So there is no other operation on this line, so it goes to the next statement, which does print zip. So output you see zip, and then again we need to call the function. So execution control goes into thing again, print hello again, print fun again. As you can see in the output represented with green color. So these both lines are printed, and then execution control comes back here. If we have further lines, they will execute from top to bottom, right? So when there is a definition, this definition is like a code that are put aside, but will not be executed right away at the definition time. And then if we look at the program flow control at the top, there is a definition. So the system knows there is a definition, only it knows that there is a definition, and the code is put aside to be executed when it is called. And then right after that definition, we have a function call. So the control goes into that definition. It's print hello, print fun, and then when all of the statements under that functions are finished executing, the control comes back to where we call the function. So the control comes back here, and then there is no other operation on this line other than function call. So it goes to the next line. Next line is print zip. It does print zip. Again, there is a function call. So the execution again goes to the thing function. Okay, execution point will go into the thing function again, and then we'll print two lines, and then finally it will come back to the thing function. If there is any further expression on this line, it will perform those operations, okay, in the expression, and then we'll continue to the next line. Now, let's take a look at how the program execution control is flowing. Okay, let's go to visualizer. We'll be able to see how the execution is moving, okay, or it's going from where to where. So let's check. First, it will know or be aware about the definition of the function thing, okay. So it does know now that there is a thing function, all right. The system is aware about the thing function. Now look at the arrow, and then I'm calling this thing function. This is not the definition. It doesn't have a def, it doesn't have colon at the end, just the name and then the bracket or parenthesis. Okay, so when you call this function, the arrow will move according to where the execution goes. So let's see. You see, it did go to the definition. Okay, this time we're calling. So when we called and the name matched here, when the function name matched right here, this definition, the control did go to that point. And then go next, it did go into the function. Now it's going to execute all of the lines that are in the function. So it did print hello. Now it's going to print fun. It did, okay. And then there is something called return value, which I have not used. That's why it says return none. So it's going to come back. This is the end of the function definition. It's going to come back to for the place from where the function was invoked. Okay. So when we go next, the red arrow came back here, but there is no other operation. So it did go to the next line. And then it will execute. This is not part of the function. It's just a printed statement of regular statement of the program. So it's printing zip. And I'm calling that same function again. This is the name. I'm calling that same function again. So the control will go into that function. See, the red arrow came here. So it's going to go into that function. It's printing hello and it's printing fun. So that will be, and then it will return from here or go back. When it comes back, there is nothing after this line. So it will end the program at the return. It did end. So these two lines, which caused from the two print statements from the function, were used once, and then again it is used. The same function was used again just by mentioning its name. Now a function can have many lines, hundreds of thousands of lines, and we can generalize a function in many different ways. Okay, this is a pretty simple function that uses two print statements. Have fun. We can call this function as many times as we want, and those statements inside the function will be executed whenever there is a call to that function. I can name a function in many different ways. If I name the function f1, for example, then when I call that function, this thing will not be recognized because thing is not a built-in function. So the program will assume that this is a user-defined function or our defined function, but if it cannot find, it will throw an error. So you have to use the function name that we actually defined, right? So f1 was the function name, so I'm calling f1 here, again calling f1 here. It's the same result. I just changed the name of the function. If the name of the function was f1, when we call, we just use the same name, okay, f1. But a function call must have a name and parentheses. You cannot avoid parentheses. If you avoid parentheses, then it becomes variable, okay? If you simply say f1, it will assume that f1 is a variable. And so when you have a parenthesis, that means it's a function. And when you define a function, you start with the keyword def and you end with a colon, and also have a function name and parenthesis. That's the definition. And all the statements under the function need to go indented, okay? So we define function first, and then we use those functions. So normally a program execution starts from line 1. When you start this program, it will only know or be aware about this function, okay, but will not execute the codes until it is called, the function is called or invoked. So it will skip all the lines at the beginning. It will only be aware about if one function. It will skip all the lines, and then it will start executing from top to bottom or regular statements, and part of the regular statement is function call. When the function is called, the program execution go into the function, execute all the lines inside the function, and then comes back there. If you have any operation, It will do other operation. In this case, there is no other operation and no other expression, so it goes to the next line and so on. All right. Okay, so there are two types of functions. Okay, this built-in function, and we have used these functions. We have used print. When we use print, we say the word print. We use bracket. We use a string inside bracket, right? And or we use variable inside bracket. But you must have the name and also the brackets. For any function, we used input to take user input. We used type to get the type of a data. It can be a variable or it can be a constant. We used float to convert an integer to float, or a string that looks like float to float. We used int function to convert a float number to integer or a string to integer, so for conversion purpose. So these functions we never defined, but we used them. So those are built-in functions. And the function f1 that we used like a minute ago, that's what we defined with the keyword def, and then gave a name to that function, use parentheses, use colon, use the statements inside, and then we also used that same function. All right. Now, a function can be used in many ways. Some function can have arguments, and arguments are values that are put when we call that function. That those values are put inside the parentheses. Okay, inside the parentheses, those are arguments. For example, when you use the print function, in this case, this print is a function. This print is a function, but the value that we have used here, that is called an argument. Okay, and that argument goes inside the parentheses. And depending on what the function will do, we use this value inside the function. In our thing function, we don't have any argument. We did not use any argument, so it was empty in the parentheses. Okay. So a function can have argument, or a function may not have argument, but the values that we put inside the parentheses, those are called arguments. And in many cases, we're going to use those arguments. We define a function by using the def, it's a reserved word. Okay, we call or invoke the function by using the function name and parentheses and argument if we have one or more. We can have one argument, we can have more than one argument, but the function name is needed. We must have function name, we must use parentheses to call the function, and then we might use argument or we might not use argument. So if we look at here, a function can be used in an expression as well. For example, this is an assignment expression. Big is a variable, equal to max is a function. As you can see, this is not the definition, but this is the use of the max function. Okay, this is call of the max function. The word max, and then we have a bracket, opening and closing, opening parenthesis, closing parenthesis, and inside that parenthesis we have a string type of argument, okay, or a string type of value. Okay, so this is the argument, and then what this function does is this function actually returns some value, gives back some value. That value is replaced right at this place. When you replace a certain value in here, what happens to this big variable? The big variable value changes to that value. Okay, here is an example how we used how the max function is used. So the max function name is max, and we have this parenthesis. Inside we have an argument. This argument is used inside the max function. How the max function is defined, we don't know, but we can guess. Okay, what it's doing is it's getting the largest letter from this string. If you look at different letters here, H, E, capital H, by the way, capital letter and a small letter, they're different. A capital letter has a lower number as compared to a small letter. So when you compare capital H and small h, capital H is smaller. Anyway, so it's comparing all these letters and finding the letter that has a largest value. Every letter has an equivalent value and equivalent numerical value, and those numerical values are called ASCII code. If you Google ASCII code, you will see every letter has a numerical value. And then, so essentially what this max function is doing, the definition of max function is doing, which you don't see, but I can guess, that max function is comparing all these letters and finding the letter that has the maximum numerical equivalent value. And in our case, W is that letter. So it returns a value. This function returns a value. So this function call will return the letter W. So in this place, W will be replaced when the function comes back, okay, from the call. When it comes back, it will give W right at this place. So this statement becomes big equals W. So print big. So it's going to print W. This is the output. And then min, another function, what it does is it looks for all the characters inside the string and find the lowest character in terms of their numerical value comparison. And also it returns that character that has the lowest numerical value, equivalent value, or ASCII code. And so it returns a character, okay? And that character is replaced at this place that is highlighted. So that character is replaced. This highlighted place is replaced with that character. So this statement becomes tiny equal to that character. In our case, we have HELLO. There is also a space and then WORLD. If you compare all of these letters, then this space has the lowest numerical equivalent. So this min will return this space. So the tiny will get a space character, and then when you print tiny, that prints the space character, which is invisible, right? Non-printable character, but it's invisible. So that's why you don't see anything in the output. Anyway, so this function we are using in here, okay? And when we use a function, some functions can return a value. Our function will be able to return values too. That will define how our function will behave, and we can define the function in a way that it will return value. And when a function returns a value, that return value is usually used. And most of the time, you will keep that return value in a variable. So you put a variable name equal the function call. So whatever the function returns, that return value goes into that variable so that you can use that return value through this variable in future. For example, that return value is printed by printing the variable. Another return value is held in the tiny variable, the variable named tiny, and then that is printed. We can do many other operations what we want with that return value. But when you have a return value, in many cases you keep it in a variable. Okay, we have a lot of flexibility how we are going to use. So that's the explanation of max function. We have already explained. There are a few other functions. For example, this float function, also a built-in function, right? It converts this integer number. Integer is a full number, whole number, right? Without a decimal point. It converts this integer number into decimal place, okay? And then it uses in the expression, we have a division, so it becomes 99.0 divided by 100. So the result is, and then that result is printed so it prints 0.99. Type gives you the type of the data. If you use a variable, that will be holding some data. For example, I is holding 42, which is an integer number. So the type of I is returning an integer. Then float converts I, which is an integer, 42, I is 42, and float converts that 42 into decimal point, so 42.0. Okay, and then that decimal point is held in F, and that is F is printed, so it becomes a float number. Okay, type of F is float, type returning a float data type. So this float converts to float, type returns the data type, again float converts to float, type returns the data type. These are all built-in function. Okay, and string, also we have used string function. In this case, since 1 to 3 it's 1 to 3, it's not 123, it's 1 to 3 in quotation mark, so it's a string, and it's put in a variable. When we check the type of that variable, it says str, so it's a string. Okay, and when we try to add a number with a string, it gives an error message because we cannot add number with the string. Anyway, so and then it trying to convert that string to integer. Okay, since this is convertible to integer, this is a string and it's convertible to integer, it will become 123. So I value becomes 123, but if you check the type of I value, it says it's integer now, and so these functions we have used before. Okay, and now how to define our own function. We have examples here. We have keyword, def, and then a function name, and then we need parentheses, opening and closing, and then we need colon, and then we need indentation and other statements that we want to use in the function. Okay, so that's how the grammar or the structure of a function definition. When we use the function, we simply say the name of that function. In this code, there is no use of that function. In this code, when you use, you have to just say this part, excluding the colon. You have to simply mention the function name and then the parenthesis when you use the function. Okay, there is no argument in this function definition. When you have argument in the function, they're called in the definition, it's not called argument. It has a different name. We will come to there. So here is the use of the function. Okay, so this is the definition of the function. It starts with def. We can have other statements before the function definition. We can have other statements after the function definition. When the definition comes, the system just knows about this function definition, and then when we use this function, then the code inside this function get executed. Okay, so if we use any value, for example, the print function has a value inside the bracket. This is a use of the print function, and when you have this value, this is called the argument. And in the function definition also, if you do have argument, the function definition will also have something inside the bracket. In that case, those are called parameters. Okay, we'll come later about parameters. So an argument is a value we pass or give to the function. Okay, or you can say it's input to the function. We use those arguments. in the way we want. Okay, so when hello world, this argument is passed. This is like the input to the function, and this input is used in the function definition. Parameters. Now when you define a function here, now look at this. Greet is a function. We have a greet function definition. It starts with def and then the function name greet. And now inside the parenthesis, we have a variable. Okay, it's a variable. Now this variable is called a parameter, and it becomes a variable. So a parameter is a variable when you define the function. So this part, this lang is a variable. And when you used the function greet, for example, this is the function name. So we use the function name in the call, and then we need to pass argument or value. Okay, when we pass this argument and value, this argument or value, this value is initialized, or the variable in the function definition is initialized with this value. So you are passing the input, okay, en is for English here, es is for Spanish, and fr is for French. Okay, so these three different values, when we call this function in three different times, we passed three different values. When we call this function first time, en, this value is passed as input, and the parameter that we have in the function definition, this variable gets initialized with this value. Okay, when we call this function, this en value is used for this lang variable. When we call the function second time with a different input, es, okay, so this es value is used for the lang variable when we call this function second time. When you call the same function third time, now fr, this fr value is used for this variable. Okay, when you call this function third time. Now let's take this code and let's use this in our let's say so these are the code. Okay, for this function we are defining a function greet. The function has a parameter, and the parameter name is lang. It's essentially a variable. We can use anything else. We can use a, for example, a. Okay, it doesn't matter how we name it. So it's like a variable, right? And this greet function is called or used three times with three different inputs or three different arguments. Now, if we think about what the execution flow would be, first, as we know that the system will start from the beginning as soon as it finds the keyword def. Okay, then it will look for a definition. So it will be aware about this greet function, and will also know that there is an parameter a, but it's not going to execute any of the code inside this function right now. So it will go to the next statement, which has a function name. And I know this is a function. The system knows this is a function because it has a name and then it has parentheses. So it will look for greet function. It will look for greet function when this is called, it will look for greet function, and here is the greet function. When it looks for greet function, it will also take the input en with it, and that en value will be used for the variable that is used in the parenthesis of the function definition, or this is the parameter. The parameter or the variable a will take this value, okay, en, and then it will start executing all the statements that are inside this function. So we have if we think we're calling greet, so the control goes here, and en is taken as the value of a. Okay, so a becomes en, the value of a becomes en. In the function definition, we are checking if a is es. If it is, if a is equal to es, remember the if function, if, and there is a conditional comparison, there is a condition which compares two values. So en came as the value of a, so a is en, and it's comparing if a is equals to es. If it is, then it will execute the statements under if, but it is not, right? En will not match with es, so it will go to the next part of if, which is elif. Again, it will check this comparison. Is a, which is still en, equal to fr? No, right? If it is, then it will go to this print, but if it's not, it will go to the next part of if-else function. And then it comes to else. Else doesn't have any comparison. Else means for anything that did not match before. Okay, so that's the else part. So we did bring en, and we did compare a, which has en value, with es, which didn't match, and then also compared with fr, which didn't match. So it comes to the else part, and then it says hello. So because we passed actually English, en is for English, so we are greeting in English, it is saying greet in English. And the function definition says if the input, okay, is English, if the input is es, then say hola in Spanish. If it's French, fr, then say bonjour. If it is not, then say hello. That means anything else, anything else. If it's not es, if it's not fr, then it's gonna say hello. Okay, so it doesn't matter what we put here. Okay, for anything else, it's gonna say hello. Now, if we run this, okay, so it will take, first time, it will take this value. So a becomes en. So this statement, this condition is not true. This condition is not true. So automatically it will execute this one. So I expect the output will be hello first. And then second time I call this function, it's taking this value es. So a becomes es. And then inside the function, when it compares this one and it finds a match, a is equal to es, then it's going to say hola. So the second function call will result in printing hola. And then since this is a match, this condition is a match, according to if else, the rest of the code will be skipped. So it will go out of the if else statement, and that's also end of the greet function. So control comes back here, and then on the third time call, we are passing the value fr. So the variable a will get the value fr. This condition will not be true. This condition will be true. So it will print bonjour, and then it will come out of the function, and that's the end of the program. So first I expect that it will print hello, then it will print hola, and then it will print bonjour. Okay, so let's run. And that's what it is. Now, if we say, let's say ch, okay, the first one ch, and the second function call fr need to match the case exactly, okay, and then third function call, let's say hn, okay. These three function calls, what do you expect the output will be? What do you think the output will be? Can anyone say what would be the output? Only the second would come. So it's saying that only bonjour it will print. Any other opinion? What will it print? Let's think the logic of the program. So first time, so another opinion is second and third would come. So that means bonjour and hola. First it will print bonjour and then hola. Then hello. Okay, let's think the logic. Okay, another opinion is hello, bonjour, hello. Let's think about the logic. So it's calling the greet function with ch as the input. So a becomes ch. It doesn't match. This condition is not met. This condition is not met because a is ch. Okay. This condition is also not met, so it automatically goes to else. Right? So expect it will print hello. And then on the second function call, we are passing fr in a variable. This is not met. This is met. So we expect that bonjour will be printed. Okay, and then it will go out of the function. In if else, as soon as one of the conditions are met from the top, starting from top, it keep comparing, and as soon as one condition is met, it gets out of the if else statement. If none of the conditions are met and you have an else part, then else part is executed, right? So when we call with fr goes in a, this condition is met, will be met, so bonjour is expected as the output, and then the function the control will go out of the function, and then again this function is called with hn. Okay, so the variable a will get hn. This condition is not met. This condition is not met. Automatically it comes to the else part. So this will be printed. Alright. So if we run hello, bonjour, and hello. Now, if we want to make this function really useful, then we have to think about all possible options for languages. Okay, we have more than 100 languages, and then we can greet in different languages. We greet in different ways, and then to make the full function, we have to keep using if a equals one of the language code, and then else if a equals another language code, else if actually in Python. So elif will go for all of the languages, and then finally you can put the else for the language that is the most common language that says hello. If it's English and in other languages also it's hello, then you can put that as the else part also. But efficient programming will actually do the most common one first, so that it doesn't keep checking many other conditions. Anyway, that's a different discussion. But we have only two language definition here, and for anything else it's gonna say hello. Okay, So to make it more robust, or for any language, you have to use if a equals this, else if a equals another language, else if a equals another language, else if it equals another language, and so on. Okay. Now, also we can say, let's say language, okay, L, a variable, and then equal input. We can say enter your language code. For example, we can ask user to type a language code. So user is expected to type ESFR. We can also hint user what to type, right? So let's say ENFR CH HN and okay, not code, short form maybe. So there are many, right? DE and AR, CS, AR, CS, DA, DE. I can say AR, CS, DE, and so on. We can give many options, or if there is too many, user will type a 2-letter code. Okay, and so that input is captured in L variable, and then we can actually use that L variable as the value that we want to pass. Okay, so user will type one of these language codes. If it's ES, we'll say hola. If it's FR, we'll say bonjour. For anything else, we'll say hello. But we have to make appropriate greeting in all of the languages, okay, to make it more accurate, or to make it more usable. Now, it's giving the user option to put a language code, and then if I say ES, sorry, I think I typed twice, ES, yeah. So let's run again. And then because it's ES, user input was ES, that input ES was captured in L variable. That L variable is passed as a argument. So A took the L variable value, which is ES in our example. So it did match with ES, it says hola. Run again. If we say FR, I typed it twice, I typed it twice, so again now it says bonjour. Okay, if I type anything else, okay, because I did not define many other languages, so if I say EN, it will say hello. If I say DE, it will say hello, because my program is not really complete. So I have to use greeting for greeting in respective language. If it's German, then I have to use German greeting and so on to make it more usable. All right. So anyway, so we have seen how to define a function, how to pass different values, okay, and use that values. And when we want to use that function, this time we simply need to name the function, and if we have any input for that function as an argument, we have to pass those input, and those inputs will be used in the function definition. Okay, now let's go back and see. We also have a return value, so a function can return some value, and to return a value you have to use the keyword return. And when we use the return value, that value comes back to where that function is called, and we can further use that value. So if we go back to our example, for example, let's say, I'm going to print here, and the print function will finish. Okay, now it looks a little bit complicated, okay, but we want to return a value from the function. Okay, instead of printing inside the function, I can say return. Return. I can say return. All right, so now the function definition says if the user input is yes, it will return hola. If the user input is fr, it will return bonjour. If the user input is anything else other than yes or fr, it will return hello. Okay, and how I use this, let's make it a little bit, well, I will show both way. I can use it in anywhere. When I use it anywhere, so the function call, imagine this highlighted area is replaced with the return value. Okay, this highlighted area, exactly this place, instead of the function name and all part of its function call will be replaced with the return value. Okay, return value will come back here when we call this function. So the program execution start with the input, asking for an input. I will reduce the length of this file. Let's make it even smaller. Language simply, so that it doesn't stretch all the way up to the end. Okay, so it's gonna say language, so user is expected to give an input. So the first statement that will execute will come here, but when it comes here, before printing, inside the print function, it has a function call. So this function call will execute first, okay, before the print can finish. So function call will execute first. It has a great function call with an input of the language choice from the user. Okay, that language choice is coming from the user. So if the user says en, L gets en, and then this function call is done by using by using that en. So it will come here, A will get en, will not match this one, will not match this one, so it will go to the else part, so it will return hello. So the value hello will come right here, will be replaced. Okay, this function call place will be replaced with the value hello. Okay, and then it will finish the rest of the print. So what it becomes, it will print hello Alex, right? So if our input is en, so let's run, say en, so it says hello Alex. Run again. This time we say fr, we say bonjour Alex. right? And again, yes, say hola Alex, right? So this is how we can use a return value. In many cases, you will see instead of using the word return, you will see only one return value, and sometimes it makes it more clear. So ch, since ch doesn't have a match, so it will go to the else part, right? It's returning hello. Okay. Now sometimes you will see that these values are put in a variable. Let's say r equals hola, or r equals bonjour, or r equals this, and then after you finish everything, and then we can say return r. Okay, it's the same code. Logically didn't change much. So if r is hola, sorry, if a is es, r is hola, if a is fr, r is bonjour, if otherwise r is hello, and then return r. Okay, so the function will return eventually r. The same result as before. Okay, let's check. It did use the same structure. Okay, this we have seen parameter. Now we have parameter. We have used one parameter. We have used one parameter here or one variable here. We can have more than one variable. Okay, if we have more than one variable, then when we call the function, we also have to pass more than one variable or more than one value. For example, in this example, what it's doing is we are defining a function f1, and then we want two parameters a and b to be used in that function. And let's say this function will return the multiplication result of those two values. So we can say return a times b. Okay, that's simple. Okay, that's simple. And then we're going to use that function, let's say from user input. I'm going to use that function from user input. A equals input, enter a number. Okay, and then b. So we're getting two numbers from user, and then with those two numbers we're going to call this function. So to call a function, we have to name the function name f1, and then we have to pass two values that we got from user input, and they are held in a and b. Now this a and b doesn't need to match with this a and b. Okay, it can be anything else, x and y. So if we took the input in x and y, we have to pass that x and y as the value. The user input in x and user input in y are passed in x and y, but when the function is called, the first variable value is used for the first parameter, and second value that we are passing is used in the second parameter. So before taking the input, let's first use a fixed value. So I'm going to turn off these two code and this code as well. Sorry. And then call the function f1 with two values, okay, two numbers, let's say 4 and 2. Simply, we're defining a function with two parameters, and the function is returning their multiplication result. When you call this function, we can pass any values. Okay, whatever value we pass, those values will be used for those variables to do whatever we want to do in the function. So if we call this, it's going to return this, but when it returns, if we don't use it, it's going to go away, right? So we can hold it in a variable, or we can use it in a print statement. So let's say print, or I can put it in another variable, x equals this, and then print x, okay, or I could use the function call right here as well. So when we run, we expect that a will be 4, b will be 2, so 4 times 2, it will return 4 times 2, so 8 will be replaced at this place, so x will become 8, and then print x means it will print 8, right? Now, if we want to give user more flexibility, then instead of using fixed values, we can ask user input x and y, and then call the function with xy, and also print that whatever comes back here. So a return value will comes back right here where the function is called. Okay, and so the user input will be used in place of xy, they'll multiply it, and will return, the function will return that value. So let's run, enter a number 2 and then 7. So x will be 2, y will be 7. When we call that function with xy, a will take the value of x, b will take the value of y. So a will be 2 and b will be 7, and then it will return 2 times 7. When it returns, this function call will be replaced with the return value. So here it comes 14. Expect that it will print 14, right? When we press enter. We took input, which is a string, but we tried to multiply as number. So how do I fix it? Anyone? How do I fix this error? Do you remember? The input is a string, but we are multiplying as number. So how do we fix this error? Anyone? What do we need to do? The input, even though you put number, it's considered as a string, right? So what do we need to do to fix this code? Need to convert it into number. Okay. So user input now will be number, a and b will be number. We'll be able to multiply them. 4, 6, 24. Okay. 3, 8, 4. Okay. All right. I think we're out of time. I wanted to show you more function definitions. Let's say here is an example. So it's taking two numbers, okay, and that is going in A and B, and then using a for loop, how many times? B number of times, and it's multiplying A with 1, and then multiplying, keeping in it C, multiplying with A again. It's essentially A to the power B. It's is taking a to the power b. Okay, so 2 to the power 3 is 8, 3 to the power 4 is 81, and you can put any value. You can take user input, use it here, whatever. You say 4 to the power 4, it's 256, right? You say 2 to the power 4, 16, and so on. So the function definition, okay, we're defining a function that will make hour, okay, and let's say I can use another function definition that will find the largest number from the set of values that I am passing. Largest is 8. If I change the input of the function, now it says 12 is the largest. If I change, we'll find 37, we'll find 44, if whatever the largest is, 58, so the largest is 58. Okay, so it's taking all these values in A, and then for all values in A, taking largest as -1. We have used this function before, largest, like this part, how we find the largest one, but now we are using it in a function. Okay, so we take largest as a small number and then compare each number. If we find a bigger number, we change the largest to the new big number, and in this way finally we get the largest number and print it. We can print it inside the function, we can get it from the function with return value and so on. I'm going to finish it here. Okay, take care everyone, see you in next class.